to the Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And from the stars in the sky to the oceans that cover a majority of this planet, and even the recipes you concoct in your kitchen, science makes the mundane exceptional. And we can thank some curious and sometimes quirky scientists for helping us cultivate a love for science, whether it's Carl Sagan or Bill Nye. Dr. Christian Greer is the president and CEO of the Michigan Science Center, and he's no stranger to asking questions about the mechanics of the world we live in. He's a graduate of Morehouse College with a degree in physics and a doctorate of education and learning technologies from Pepperdine University, just to name a few accomplishments.
And Tia, Dr. Greer wants to share his love of science with people across the board, but especially the next generation of curious thinkers. Many of those young, curious thinkers spend a lot of time on social media and YouTube, where recently the news of a possible asteroid impact on Earth in 2032 sent some folks into a frenzy. Initially, it was reported that a strike was highly likely, but NASA scientists determined that asteroid 2024 YR4 had little to no chance of hitting Earth. However, the moon should probably watch out. But it makes us wonder, how can science reach people where they are? Dr. Greer is here with us to let us know what's been going on at the Michigan Science Center and, of course, also what's up with asteroids. Dr. Greer, welcome to the Metro.
It's good to be here.
Oh.
So you've done a lot to create interactive experiences at the Michigan Science Center. It's also been ranked in the top 3 science museums in the country by USA Today for 4 years running. Talk about some of the exhibits that you feel have really enriched the museum and the people who come to the museum.
Well, you started off with that statement that how do we make science meet people where they are? And if you go to our website, mi-sci.org, you'll see that we have right there, it says, we put you at the center of science. And so I think you touched on it. You touched on this idea that giving people an opportunity to participate in their own learning and to create new schemas or the ways in which they organize knowledge and information for themselves, and to be able to find unique ways in which they can share that with others. And so we create exhibit experiences to do just that. So many, many years ago, the museum community wasn't really embracing science centers because science centers didn't have like physical collections. The collections were a collection of interactive exhibits. But that in and of itself is a collection. And so we see ourselves as museums, but museums of sort of knowledge and concepts and direct experience rather than artifacts representing culture. So when you come into a science center, the whole goal is to like touch something and participate in some way or try some idea or respond to a challenge, because it's really about developing your inner curiosity. We believe that everyone is a scientist deep down inside, and it gives us a chance to be able to let them discover and explore in a fun and engaging way.
Yeah, I think about the level of engagement, how experiential it is to be at a science center versus an art museum, which, of course, it's both are wonderful. But to have that kind of engagement that you can at a science center, it lights up different parts of the brain. It's a little more awakening and enlivening than maybe an art museum is. And what about the little ones? What about the babies? You all reopened Kids Town, and that's for kids 5 and under. Talk about getting really little ones involved with experimentation and curiosity.
Well, early childhood STEM or early childhood science is critically important, I think, to the learning and growth of young people. In part because although we think about these things as content areas and subject matters and disciplines, kids don't. They see the world as just one big thing that they have to explore. And we actually divide it up for them in civilization to try to find ways to expand human knowledge and something that's a little bit more predictable in sort of the academy approach. But from a kid's perspective, this is all one thing. The way they explore, the things they do online, the things they do in person, if you watch them, they're not doing them in any particular order. They're just going based on their own curiosity. So we try to match that. Now, a couple of years back, we had a real challenge, and you probably reported on this. In 2021, in the summer, on June 26th, there were incredible torrential rainstorms that took place in Detroit. A lot of organizations' buildings got flooded. Midtown was hit particularly hard, and so was the Science Center. We were down for 4 months. It was actually so crushing because I thought we did a great job recovering from the pandemic. We opened in less than 100 days. We were one of the first Science Centers that was closed to actually reopen, and we led the process for Midtown and the Cultural District to actually create, in partnership with the National Sanitation Foundation based in Ann Arbor, to reopen. Okay, so one of the things that got hit really hard was our lower level, where you may not know this, but we have almost like a children's museum, a mini children's museum called Kidstown. And that Kidstown that you mentioned is our early childhood sort of designated area. And basically the idea is for us is to give little kids the opportunity to do everything that big kids can do at the Science Center in Kidstown. So it has about 8 or 9 mini galleries, smaller galleries, in which they can explore. We recently reopened it as a prototype after getting an anonymous gift of a relatively large amount, and we're just trying things out. We're trying to find out whether or not today's kid is different than the kid of 2021. And what we're finding out is yes. And their attention spans are a little different. The stuff that they touch on and think is going to react is different. You can have just a screen, and if that screen is not a touch screen or you can't do anything with it, they think it's broken. That's the kind of thing that we are trying to do in that space.
What does that look like, though, to try and meet kids who are growing up with technology very intimately? What does it look like to meet them where they're at in that way? Can you talk more about that?
That's a very interesting question, because I think we're trying to discover what that is in an empirical way, in a very agile way, if those are familiar with agile project management and other ways in you develop value propositions and value innovation. We're trying to figure out what is the most efficient way to tap into that. And what we recognize is our customer, in our case, our guest or our learner, is not just the child. It is also the parent or caregiver. And so recognizing that parents and caregivers are a unique part of a child's learning and upgrading and evolution in terms of their exploration of science is a critical component. And many of the parents really don't want their kids to have technology experiences at the Science Center, believe it or not. They want to get them out of that, out of the house, off the couch, off the bed, and get them exploring with their hands and with their senses. And so we try to find a nice balance to optimize how we have technology that allows them to be able to explore exactly the way that you mentioned, but also to do some sort of low-tech things and toys that they can play with. And so we have all these things in there. We're partnered with LEGO at a national level called the LEGO Museum Network. We're one of only 14 organizations that was invited to participate in that. We've been doing it for 3 years. And LEGO's initiative is all about learning through play. So we try to help parents understand that play is a part of learning, if they don't already get that, and give them some tools and tips through this process in Kidstown to be able to tap into the genius within every child.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're speaking with Dr. Christian Greer, the president and CEO of the Michigan Science Center. We're learning more about what Science Center has to offer, and now we're talking about asteroids. Now, let's get into some space talk, because I'm like a nerd for this stuff. So what's up with this asteroid that's been popping up everywhere on TikTok, social media? Why did it send folks into a frenzy?
Well, I mean, the idea of like utter destruction probably gets people's attention, especially online. But in this case, I won't say it was a false alarm, but it was, we didn't want to jump too far to conclusions. What's interesting about science is I think when we're growing up in school, in K-12 education, there's this assumption, I think, that is made by the learner that it's all figured out and you just don't know about it. You have to learn about it, you have to do research, that sort of thing. But the truth of the matter is there are a lot of things that are out there, such as viruses, like with COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, in which there was a lot of stuff that scientists didn't know yet. So you're getting what scientists are learning in real time. And this is a little bit uncomfortable for people because they expect the scientists, in this case, astronomers and astrophysicists, to have it all figured out. But the universe is moving, it's dynamic, it's evolving, and it requires us to be able to be cognizant of what's out there. So in this case, for 2024, YR4, and these are, there's so many things out in space, you don't have time to give them a name. They end up getting a sort of a code name, which is a number and some letters that represent the time of the month that it was discovered and how many cycles they've been through. And in this case, that's how it got numbered as a YR4. But what's really important about this is it was extremely dark, meaning it was discovered with an automated system from telescopes that are the Atlas system that's all over the world, in Hawaii and in Chile. And in the Chile site, they were able to spot it, and they recognized it was moving very fast at 38,000 miles per hour, and that it was on a trajectory that was calculated to potentially hit Earth. So an issue of the international group that actually monitors these asteroids for planetary defense issued their first ever warning about a planetary impact or an asteroid impact to the planet, or potential in that way. Now, you might say, okay, they went a little bit overboard without that information, but because these things are so dark, you only have a limited time to be able to detect it and plot its trajectory or its curved path in flight around the sun to know where it's going to go. And they were able to find out that it would return many years from now, 2032. And that in December, perhaps on December 22nd, they were able to calculate that. So I hope there's nobody's birthday out there that was really looking forward to this. But I think they determined that based on getting more data, they were able to refine and discover that the likelihood of hitting Earth is now very low. But it gives us a chance because we got to get out ahead of the game. If we see something that's headed even in our vicinity, we might need several years to mount a defense strategy. Some of these have been tested, so I feel good about that. But it was a good way to let everyone know that we're watching, because many people don't even know that we're out looking at the skies all the time, and there are algorithms. And, these are job opportunities for kids to go out and be part of planetary defense. We need some planetary defense cadets out there.
Captain Planet Unite. I cannot. I'm ready for it. I think I might have a job switch coming up. Captain Planet.
Yeah, we want these young kids to put their astrophysics cape on and get out there and defend the Earth.
And just speaking of astronomers and detecting these asteroids, you talked a little bit about it, but when we're determining when it's going to come towards Earth, if it possibly will make an impact or not make an impact, especially with this one, if an impact were to happen on Earth, how large in scale are we talking about in comparison? How large was this asteroid?
Well, they don't know the exact size, but it's probably anywhere from about 50 feet to 300 feet in diameter. And I say diameter because most of them are not, with quotes, because most of them are not really spherical. These asteroids have weird shapes. They're tumbling around, which makes it challenging to figure out what it is because it's reflecting at different times as it tumbles and spins. But it really depends. At traveling at 38,000 miles per hour, that's as fast as the Voyager probes that went out in the 80s to discover the outer planets. And then there are other kinds of things that weigh in. What is its composition? What's its mass? So if you remember from physics class, the formula for kinetic energy, which is 1/2 mv squared. The m stands for the mass of the object, or a measure of matter, and the v represents its velocity. And its two components there is both the speed and the direction that it's coming, because it can go in a speed, but if the velocity is headed out away from Earth, we don't care so much. But if you think about that speed and you square it, then it becomes really impactful, so to speak. And then the mass makes a difference too on where it hits. But the good news is the Earth is about 72% covered with water, so the likelihood potentially of it impacting a city or something like that is low. That doesn't mean there can't be, if it's close to a coast, that you can't have tsunamis or other kinds of earthquakes that are triggered. But at least if it was hitting out in the desert, let's say, I would imagine that there would be a crater almost a mile wide if this particular object were to hit out in Arizona next to Meteor Crater or something like that. That spews up all kinds of particles into the atmosphere. There might be earthquakes that would take place that you could see on a seismometer.
So really quickly,
it's
because
serious.
I know we're getting down to the end here, and it's very, very quickly. I need you to just, this is quickly. How can we make scientists the rock stars? How can we make them the Bill Nyes again?
Well, it's because of events like this. These types of events really get us thinking about the value of science and scientists and the ability to ask questions. In this nanosecond culture that we are in, sometimes you just react emotionally to something that you're sliding through on a reel or something like that. And we really need to create thinkers and thinkers that are disciplined. And that's what we promote at the Michigan Science Center, to give people that opportunity to do it.
Dr. Christian Greer is the president and CEO of the Michigan Science Center. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
It's good to be here.
Of course.
Coming up at 11, the Trump administration has been busy over the last month. Most of what's been done thus far is to cut jobs and issue threats to freeze federal funding. And that's been under the leadership of Elon Musk. Critics of Trump find these job cuts to be chaotic. They see the spending freezes as hurting public institutions and threatening democracy. But Trump supporters believe otherwise. So what should we make of Trump's actions thus far? Are they catastrophic to our society or simply part of a larger conservative agenda? We'll find out more in the next hour.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. And this is the Metro. Stay right with us.